You're looking for a quick, easy, and cheap fish breeding project that could even make you a little extra cash. Then make sure you keep watching and learn how you can do just that. And all you need are a few easy to come by items like a 10-gallon tank, a sponge, some moss, and a cheap light, and of course the fish. Make sure you let me know if you've bred these fish before or if you've thought about it. White Cloud Minnows are a super easy breeding project and they won't cost you an arm and a leg to get the setup going. These fish themselves are cheap. They come in a few different varieties and they're a cold water fish, so you don't even need a heater. Now these fish are also known as the poor man neon tetras. They acquired this nickname because they were much more affordable and just as beautiful in color as the more expensive neon tetras. They originate in cool streams of China. These fish are hardy, peaceful, and wonderful for beginners, especially if you want to dip your toe in a breeding project. Which means, since they're from cooler waters, they do like water depths of 55 to low 70s. They don't need to get super hot. They can tolerate a wide pH range of about 6 to 8, and they're an easy egg scattering fish to breed. Especially if I can do it, you'll be able to do it too, because the only thing I've ever bred are guppies and snails. So this is another easy one if you want to get away from those live bearers. So what do you need to start? First up, go to your local pet store, go on Amazon Marketplace, ask your best friend, hey, I need a 10-gallon fish tank. Do you have one lying around? They're super cheap to buy, so even if you have to buy one, it's not going to break the bank. You don't even need any substrate with these fish. That's how easy these are going to be. I just used some Java fern that I have lying around in other tanks, so I was able to repurpose it there. Slapped a Hygger light on there, slapped a Hygger sponge filter in there, and the fish are breeding like crazy since about a month after I got them. If you don't have access to Java moss or another kind of moss, a lot of people have used marbles before. You just scatter those on the bottom of your tank, or if you want, you can use something like a spawning mop, and they've had similar results to me keeping these. Breeding these White Cloud Minnows is super straightforward. What I did was I went out and got myself a group of 6 or 8 of these from the wet spot to ensure that I hopefully had enough males and females to start a colony. Or if you know a breeder or a friend that has some that can actually sex the fish for you, you can ask them to give you a couple breeding pairs instead. You can encourage the spawning by doing cold water changes and feeding them a high protein food on a regular basis. Once a week water changes, daily feeding. The best way to get fish to reproduce for you is to show the parents that there is a constant supply of food for their young. Because think about it, you're not going to want to stay somewhere where there's no food. You're definitely not going to want to have a kid if you know you can't feed them. So as long as you're providing your fish with a steady diet of something high protein, it's going to not only help them grow and mature, it's going to help them realize that they could easily have more offspring. A lot of people say you need to start an infusoria culture, which requires a whole mess of work. I tried it. I couldn't get a culture doing, so what did I use instead? I used Hikari First Bite. I used Sarah Micron. I also was using Hikari Frozen Daphnia and Hikari Frozen Baby Brine. I also added in some Northfin fry food as well. The 3 fry foods, the Northfin, the Hikari, and the Sarah, are more like a powder and they're super small. Stick them in something like a squeeze condiment bottle. Just put them in there. Go ahead, give it a squeeze. It'll slowly disseminate through your water column. Parents will get it, the babies will get it, and you shouldn't have to worry about it. The water changes like in the wild when there's a rain. It signifies to the parents that they can start spawning. This is typical with Corydoras as well. And really, once they get going, the females are going to constantly lay their eggs underneath leaves in the wild. In your tank, they'll lay it on the mosses or the marble, whichever you choose to use. Personally, I found these are just as easy to breed as guppies. You basically just have to add water and do your normal stuff. I personally have had the most success breeding the wild Vietnamese White Cloud Mountain Minnows. So mine came wild caught. I now have first generations growing in my tank. After the fry hatch, it is of course crucial to make sure you're caring for them right. Same thing, food, make sure you're feeding them once a day minimum. If you want to do twice feedings, do it every 10 to 12 hours. Just make sure you're not overfeeding and causing an ammonia spike in your tank. You're also going to want to do your water changes on these tanks, I would say once a week, maybe every other week, just to make sure you're keeping the water nice and clean for your fish. Like I said, I use various foods with feeding mine. I still feed the Hikari, Sarah, and Northfin fry foods even after the fry are born, but I will also alternate in a frozen brine shrimp cube or brine spirulina cube or even some bloodworms every now and then. Just make sure you're pulling any excess out because again, you don't want that ammonia spike on your fish. You're going to want to also make sure the water stays cool. If your water gets too high into the 70s, these fish are going to stop reproducing. The magic number seems to be anything over like 74 4, these fish tend to stop reproducing for you. So try and keep the water as cool as you can wherever you keep the tank. So try and put the tank in a cooler place, or you might have to do more cold water changes if you can to keep that water down. And that's as easy as it is. You don't need anything else. With the proper care and patience, you can have a successful white cloud colony breeding and thriving in a 10-gallon tank. You can take those fish to the fish store, you can sell them online, and you can make yourself a little extra cash while you do this hobby. I did a whole care video on White Cloud Minnows. I'll put a link for it here, but also just remember that every fish is unique. So what works for me may not particularly work for you. You might have to do a little trial and error and figure it out where it works for you. So keep the discussion flowing down in that comment section and make sure you fin scribe, and I will catch you in the next one.